So that was our top 5 favorite horror games, but there's so many really good horror games out there, we have to include an honorable mentions list. So here we go. So our first one on our list is Haunting Ground. Now this, just kind of like Deadly Premonition, is definitely a hidden gem.
Yes, Haunting Ground is such an excellent game. It's unfortunate that not a lot of copies of this were made, and now it's starting to become a little more popular. So this game is quite expensive to look for. Personally, I wanted to get this game, and so I actually purchased it on eBay, and I paid $180 for it.
That's how rare.
Yes, it did come with the study guide, like the guidebook to the game, which is also cool because there was a lot of stuff in that game that I didn't know were there. So yes, so if any of you guys are able to find this game for under $100, definitely get it because that's a sweet deal right there. Other than that, the game is a little bit up there with the price, unfortunately, but it's definitely something that you wouldn't regret buying, especially if you are a huge horror gamer and you just in general just like to have a little collection of kind of like those hidden gems. So basically, long story short, with Haunting Ground, I'll keep this very brief. Haunting Ground revolves around a girl named Fiona, and she ends up in a castle and has no idea how she got there. So when she gets there, and then she comes across different characters in the game who are just all sadistic in themselves. They all have different kind of twisted personalities, and they all have a reason why they want her there. So she starts to unravel the secrets throughout this castle about what they want with her and what happened with her parents, and then she does realize what she is there for. And Haunting Ground, you do also have a little companion with you. You do end up with a white German Shepherd named Huey. And Huey is basically like just that dog that is your protector. He is there to save you from, and don't get me wrong, this dog will save you. I mean, he will save your ass in some of these scenes in the game. So Haunting Ground, like I said, is just an excellent game. If you're able to find it for the price of under $100, definitely pick it up. It's worth trying out. And again, what I really also like about this game too, it's extremely original, and it's also from the same creators who made the Resident Evil franchise, if some of you didn't know. And so you know then it has a really good storyline. It actually wasn't a very popular game in the beginning. When it first came out, it was not popular. So I actually came across this game reading an article in a magazine, and I never heard of it. So I was like, you know what, I'll go ahead and give it a try. Now, during this time, I was able to just go to GameStop and get it for like $30. But now, like I said, because it's such a hidden gem and that not a lot of copies are out there, it's a little up in price again. But it's, all in all, the game is excellent. It's original, great characters, great storyline, great eeriness throughout the game, and the castle itself is very spooky. That's all I can really say about this game. Just try to give it a, if you can somehow get your hands on a copy, get it. Or if you know someone that has this game, play it.
Absolutely. So, moving on. Next on this honorable mention list, I'm going to have to put Until Dawn. So, I'm personally a really big fan of choice-making games. I've played Detroit Become Human. I was a really big Heavy Rain fan. I played some of the Telltale games. I know those are more of like comic book feels to it, like the Walking Dead series and Tales from the Borderland. So I really love choice-making games. Those are probably one of my favorites to play. So in terms of horror choice-making games, this one is probably one of the best I've ever played. Heavy Rain was more of like a psychological thriller, so I wouldn't really put that in like the horror category. So what I really like about this game is you play, I think it's like 7 or 8 different characters, and it's up to you whether or not they die in the game or they live in the game. So there's just a lot of twists and turns. You don't know who like the killer is or if it's something more supernatural. I won't give too much away, but you're not really sure what's going on, and you're on edge a lot of the time. But what I really like about it too is there is a lot of like comedic relief in there as well, kind of like a campy horror. So it kind of plays good tribute to a lot of those horror films out there, like the cliches and you know, like the typical, like there's the jock character, there's the promiscuous character, there's like the more like meaner girl character, you know, the smart guy, the nice guy, the playboy guy, the likable character. So it kind of like plays tribute to a lot of the characters that you see in like horror movie games, which I'm a big horror movie fan, obviously, since I like the horror game franchise as well. So if you like choice making games, if you like horror, this is definitely a game that I definitely recommend that you check out.
And I also love the fact that the game is extremely interactive. It's
very cinematic. It's like playing a movie almost.
It is. It's just like playing a movie. And, you know, I personally, I didn't finish this whole game. I did play the majority of it, though, at least to get a good idea of what it's about and what happens and what the characters and what they're like. But it's, you know, it's a really good game. It is really good, and I do like the comedy relief, like you had mentioned. I do like that too. I like, you know, because it is supposed to be like a campy horror game, game. So, you know, we all love those kind of movies. They make us laugh, you know, kind of thing. But it also does have its sense of, you know, uneasiness.
Right, and even plays a little bit with the psychological thriller aspect of it too. So they kind of add a little bit of everything in there. Like it's a big pot and you're just adding all these different spices in there. That's what it reminds me of. So if you love horror movies and you love horror games and you like to do like those choice making games, definitely get this game. Next on our list is Last of Us. So I know this is definitely a fan favorite. It's definitely more of like a mainstream game. I feel like in terms of survival horror, this is a game that's definitely worth playing. It can be a little bit challenging, it can be a little bit difficult, but if you like a challenge, if you like survival horror games, definitely pick up a copy of this game. It's totally worth your while. The second game to this game is actually coming out fairly soon, so if you want to play that game, if you like the first one, then definitely play the first one before it comes out. The second one looks even spookier than the first one does, and I'm very excited for it to come out. So basically the whole premise of the story is you play a man who is trying to get this little girl to a specific location, so it feels like it's them against the world, basically. You're fighting monsters, you're fighting people, you can't trust anybody. So this game is also very cinematic too. It's kind of like you're playing a game that's like a movie in a sense. So those games are always kind of a favorite of mine as well, because you get very invested in the characters you play. And it's also a very lengthy game too, so you definitely get your money's worth when you play it. So if you have not played this game before, I would definitely recommend also getting this game as well. So next on this list is Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
Alright, so this game, I had actually just recently played this. It's not really considered like horror, just horror. It's actually like a dark fantasy game. If anybody is a fan of like the Norse myths and like mythology and all that, like I am, this game is definitely for you. A lot of it does kind of relate to it, and the girl that you play as, who is Senua, she is going through this like kind of woodsy little area, and she is looking for her lover, who is in hell, that everybody knows is that the two-faced woman in the mythology. And so when she goes through this, so she's battling through all the different kind of like mythology gods, like the fire gods and like all that. So you battle through them, and with this game is that it definitely gives you like a sense of uneasy in the fact that the girl that you play as has schizophrenia. So this game is highly recommended to play with headphones on, and I did play it with headphones on, and it really gives you that amazing surround sound. So it does really make you feel like people are talking in one ear, kind of going around, and it does feel like you're that person that is hearing voices. So, and these voices sometimes do help you, and sometimes they kind of throw you off track a little bit. They're trying to distract you. They try to make you feel like what you're doing is not right, the moves you're making are wrong. But during the combats, they're a big help for you. These voices will actually tell you if there's enemies coming up from behind you that you have to fight. But my only issue with this game is that the combat style is kind of a pain. The controls are kind of weird. You might want to practice with it a little bit on the easy mode. You can change the difficulty on it. I just played it on normal mode, but for me it kind of becomes a little tiring after a while because you're pressing like the same button to make certain strikes and then like heavy blows to these enemies. So, but all in all, the game is really good, and there's actually little posts that you go through the game and you get to hear pieces of like mythology stories, which is really cool.
That is cool.
So in terms of like the length of this game, it's not really the longest game. It's a little bit short, but there are some parts in this game too that are very scary. And then there's parts where it makes you feel very happy. So there's a good balance of that, you know, good and bad and what goes on. And so, you know, and the ending with the story is not something you would expect either. So I love games that have those kind of twist endings. So this is definitely one of them. This game is actually available on the Xbox Game Pass. If you have that, you can definitely play it on there for free. Or if you do find it on the Xbox Store, I believe it's just $24.99. It's not it's not an expensive game, and it's definitely worth it if you don't have Xbox Game Pass. So I would definitely highly recommend trying that game out. It's a little bit different from what everything else we have on their list, but we wanted to kind of include this one because it definitely has its own uniqueness. So if you come across this game, highly recommend it. Give it a try.
I think I'm gonna try it too, actually. So
yes, it is available on PlayStation 4. If anybody who doesn't have Xbox, you can play it on PlayStation 4.
Cool. Last but surely not least on our list is Resident Evil 2. So Resident Evil by far is probably one of my favorite Resident Evil games of all time. Plus, it's probably one of my favorite games in the franchise in regards to the older games. It has a great storyline. It has the worst acting possible. And probably one of my favorite parts of the whole entire game is that you play two different characters. So it's kind of like you get two games in one. So you play Leon's character, you meet, you know, some interesting characters in his storyline, and then you play Claire Redfield, and then you meet a couple interesting characters in her storyline. And what's cool is that the storyline in general just kind of like meshes really well together. What I didn't really like about the original one is that it's like the bird's eye view, so the camera angles get a little wonky every now and then, but the storyline and the acting and just the game itself is just, it's very charming and it's funny, and it's definitely one of my favorite Resident Evil games.
Yeah, and going back to the bird's eye view, like that fixed camera, that actually, one thing I forgot to mention about Haunting Ground before was that game is also fixed camera. So if some of you who aren't a big fan of that, right, that's something I'd like to just mention now, because I did forget about that when I was talking about it. But anyway, going back to Resident Evil 2, yes, it is a great game. I did play the remastered version. It did stick quite well to the original storyline. I know some of it may have been tweaked according to some people.
Which is, you know, to be expected.
Right. So my only biggest complaint about that one is that I'm glad they fixed the fixed camera.
Right,
thing.
that was definitely a mass improvement.
You know, and then of course there's always people who complain about something, but there is one where, you know, people were saying they don't like third person, which I personally love third person.
I do.
It's my favorite.
Yeah.
And but again, one thing I didn't like about the remastered edition was the way they made Leon and Claire's characters look. Now, I know that they were using images of the actors. I don't think it was the voice actors, but I could be wrong, but I think they were just using like models for them. And which is okay, I guess, but I just, you know, I don't think it's right to change. And kind of like going back to Resident Evil 7, how they changed Chris Redfield's character in the DLC. I was not a big fan of that, but with him, he looks completely different. Like, I didn't even know it was him. And that kind of pisses me off, honestly, because him being my favorite character out of the franchise, I was a little upset about that. But anyway, that's probably my biggest complaints about it. I think they did a great job with the remaster.
Yeah,
though.
it's basically the same exact thing. Of course, there was a couple tweaks here and there, but nothing major. They pretty much stayed with the storyline, but they fixed the whole like bird eyes view and
Yes.
the
I'm so glad they did
yeah,
that.
the quality of the game is obviously a lot better. The acting's a lot better. But the reason why I love Resident Evil 2, the original, is it just has that really cool vintage quality of it. What makes me like really love the Resident Evil franchise as a whole. So if you play the remastered version but you've never played the original, I highly recommend that you play the original. And if you play the original but never played the remastered, go ahead and play the remastered. It's just such a solid game for the franchise, so we definitely highly recommend you at least check it out.
And they do have the DLC too for the remaster. I personally didn't finish all of it. I know that one of them has to do with Hunk. He has like his own kind of like campaign or whatever. I forget what it was called. I did play it a couple times. I didn't really make it through. I haven't had time to really get to that. I know there's another one. I can't remember the girl's name, but there is one more story. I believe that she's in search for her boyfriend or something, and I definitely want to get onto that eventually. But yeah, definitely highly recommend it. If you haven't played the original, definitely get yourself a copy and give it a shot. If you do have a PlayStation, then you can get it, because I don't think you could play the original on like newer consoles now, but I'm sure, you know, PC gamers might find a way to somehow get it on their PC and play it that way. But if you could somehow get across it, give it a shot.
Or if you have a Nintendo 64, that's how I played the original Resident Evil 2 game. I think it's also on the original PlayStation console as well.
Yes.
So there's options out there for sure. You can still get it. So definitely check it out for sure. Hey! That was our list, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching our video. If you like this video at all, give some love to the like button down below, or shoot us a comment. Let us know if you agree with our list or not. If you want to see more videos just like this one, hit that subscription button right there. But until then, that's a wrap.